Hello everyone, today we have a new theory about Sprunki. Don't forget to leave your best theories in the comments, and we'll be sure to share them in future episodes. Today we have a very intriguing theory that I think you'll find fascinating. I'll go into detail about what happened to Sprunki and how their city became so eerie. This theory was written by the user FireFurry00 on the Incredibox Sprunki wiki. Let's start with the fact that there are dead characters in the game. They can all be divided into three categories. The first category includes those who died relatively normal deaths. These include Sky and Tunner. Their injuries are explainable and straightforward. They were killed by WENDA, as she's the only one who could have inflicted such injuries. The second category involves stranger deaths, including Pinky, Ratty, Garnold, Kluker, Oren, and possibly Veneria. Among them, Pinky was likely killed by Simon, as her injuries resemble the aftermath of his bite. Garnold was killed by his costume. This could have happened accidentally without anyone's fault, possibly during an attack by WENDA or someone else. Kluker most likely had something fall on his plate from above, resulting in a head injury. The third category includes those who turned into monsters. These characters are Derpal, Mr. Sun, Mr. Tree, Simon, and OXEX. Now, what about the horrifying Dark World? There's a theory that this is some alternate realm, but what if I told you it's actually the world where we begin the game? But what happened to it? Take a moment to consider the Dark World's appearance. It's almost entirely black, enveloped in shadows and mystery. And who else in the game is most closely associated with the color black? Naturally, it's Black from Sprunki. Could he be the one who destroyed the good, vibrant world? But what could drive him to such a drastic act? All the characters in the game are friends with each other, forming a close-knit community, but Black stands apart from this unity. He has no connections or real ties with anyone else, almost as if he's a forgotten shadow. While other characters share bonds, laugh, and support one another, Black was rejected or even overlooked by them, like he was invisible in their lives. In the Dark World, there's also a haunting clue. We see a missing person's poster on Mr. Tree. It shows a girl who bears a striking resemblance to Black in terms of design and style. This connection makes me think that this might be Black's lost daughter, or perhaps even his wife, who mysteriously vanished. If so, Black not only faced the pain of losing someone dear to him, but was also rejected by everyone else he could have turned to for comfort or support. It's a double tragedy that could have ignited a deep anger in him, leading him down a dark path. With this anger and sorrow, he may have decided to destroy their world as a form of revenge for his suffering. Perhaps Black possesses a unique ability, one tied to his association with darkness, an ability to absorb colors. Driven by his pain, he began using this power to drain colors from the vibrant world around him, plunging it slowly into darkness. But his vengeance didn't end with the world itself. He began taking colors from other characters, causing them to lose their original forms and turn into grotesque, monstrous versions of themselves. This is the tragic reason why everyone has become so dark and twisted. Let's call this dreadful power distortion. Through it, Black exacts his revenge, reshaping the world and its inhabitants in his image, one of sorrow and isolation. Mr. Sun was also affected by the distortion. Because the sun emits light that is absorbed by plants, the plants in Veneria began to take in this distorted sunlight, which caused them to mutate and spread uncontrollably across all of Veneria. The plants grew aggressively, changing in form and color, transforming the landscape into something both unfamiliar and eerie. However, there were certain characters who were colorless by nature: Kluker, WENDA, and Gray. Due to their unique qualities, they were unaffected by the distortion or the monstrous transformations that plagued others, allowing them to exist in this corrupted world undisturbed. But for Kluker, this immunity ultimately didn't bring any relief. WENDA in particular was deeply affected as she witnessed everyone around her morph into terrifying monsters. Unable to bear the sight of her friends succumbing to these grotesque changes, she resolved to save them in her own way. She couldn't halt the distortion itself, but she thought she could prevent the full transformations by killing them before they lost all humanity. Yet Tunner couldn't let her follow through with this plan, so she started with him. At that time, the world hadn't fully darkened, and there were still a few who hadn't completely turned into monsters. WENDA approached Tunner, launched a swift attack, disarmed him, seized his gun, and shot him. This is why Tunner appears simply dead in the game, with no monstrous transformation. After this incident, WENDA began her tragic mission, seeking out her other friends to put them out of their misery before the distortion could fully take them. However, seeing her companions transformed into monsters, attacking each other, and witnessing herself killing them, gradually drove her to madness. Meanwhile, the distortion eventually reached Ratty. Realizing that he was undergoing the same horrific transformation and recalling the fate of the others, he made a drastic decision to end his life before the process could complete. This did stop his transformation, but since it had already begun, the parts of his body that hadn't fully transformed became unstable, eventually disintegrating and falling off. So let's look at the surviving characters. If I remember correctly, Funbot, Mr. Fun Computer, Brood, Wenda, Gray, and Jevin survived. The first two survived because they aren't alive, they're just machines. Brood survived Simon's bite, but he's colorful, so distortion should have affected him. Here are a few theories. Distortion has less effect on darker colors, which is what Brood has. Brood is rather simple, lacking anything within to distort. Black controlled the distortion. He found characters and drained their energy. When he saw the bitten Brood, he might have thought Brood was already dead or distorted and passed by. Wenda and Gray are characters defined by their lack of color, which rendered them immune to the effects of the distortion. This mysterious phenomenon transformed most other beings, altering them into twisted and monstrous forms. But because Wenda and Gray are colorless, the distortion couldn't impact them in the same way it did others, leaving them largely unaffected by the widespread chaos. Then there's Jevin. Unlike Wenda and Gray, Jevin is colorful and vibrant, albeit with a dark edge. Logically, he should have been vulnerable to the distortion, as it tends to affect anyone with bright, distinctive colors. And yet, Jevin somehow survived the distortion, remaining unchanged and retaining his original form. But how could this be? Just listen to Jevin's voice in both the good world and the dark, distorted one. You'll notice that while his voice didn't fundamentally change, it took on a darker, more haunting quality in the twisted world, almost as if Jevin is casting some sort of spell. His tone has an eerie resonance, as if he is channeling something mystical, and if you look closely at him, his appearance even resembles that of a sorcerer, hinting at a deep understanding of magic and the supernatural. It's reasonable to speculate that upon learning about the destructive effects of the distortion, Jevin may have drawn on his magical knowledge to create a protective shield. This barrier would have shielded him from the distortion's corrupting influence, allowing him to retain his identity and avoid becoming a monster like so many others. His foresight and magical skills may have saved him from an otherwise inevitable fate, granting him a unique immunity. Finally, this brings us to the question of who killed Orin. A plausible theory is that Wenda may have attacked Orin, cutting his chest with a knife in an attempt to kill him, but perhaps he didn't die right away. Instead, he lingered on the edge of life, and during that vulnerable state, the distortion took hold of him, accelerating his transformation into a monster. In this way, the distortion continued to spread its dark influence, even through those who were near death. So, what do you think of this theory? Could Jevin have used magic to resist the distortion, and did Wenda's attack on Orin inadvertently cause his monstrous transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give us a like to stay updated on more theories and discussions. Thank you for viewing Luck, and see you soon.